Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really powerful idea about where modern war actually comes from, tracing a line from a simple human flaw all the way up to our most destructive global conflicts.
So let's just get right to it. Where does war really come from? Is it just baked into our DNA, an inevitable part of human nature? Or is it the end result of a massive, complicated system that we ourselves have built, piece by piece, over the centuries?
Well, the analysis we're looking at today points to one core idea: the human ego. You know, that feeling that we're completely self-sufficient, that we don't need to answer to any higher authority or moral code. It's this tiny seed of conflict, and it's an ideal you'll find in traditions all over the world.
And you see this idea pop up again and again. Take this line from the Torah. It's the Pharaoh, defiantly asking, "Who is the Lord that I should obey him?" That right there, that's the ego talking. It's the ultimate rejection of being held accountable.
And this really frames the ultimate trade-off, right? It asks that gut punch of a question. What's the point of winning everything, of gaining the entire world, if you completely lose who you are, your very humanity along the way?
All right, so let's dig into this, because here's where it gets truly dangerous. The problem isn't just the ego as a personal flaw. The real threat appears when that feeling of absolute self-importance becomes the actual foundation for political power.
Okay, so this is where things get really interesting. This is the first big leap in our analysis. How does one person's personal ego get scaled up, get amplified, and then get hardwired into the official policy of an entire country?
And the way this escalates, well, it follows this really clear, kind of scary path. It all starts with one person's ego. Then that ego gets institutionalized. It becomes the logic of the state itself. And finally, it gets weaponized by creating a collective ego, a powerful us versus them mentality.
And if you're looking for the classic example, the archetype of this whole thing, it's the Pharaoh. When he says, "I am your Lord the Most High," that's the peak of the mountain. For him, there's zero difference between his personal desires and the law of the land. His ego is the state.
Now, it's fascinating to see how modern social science tries to grapple with this. You've got different theories, right? Realism says war is just a natural power struggle. Liberalism hopes that our institutions can prevent it. But what our source material suggests is that these theories often miss that core ingredient, that moral dimension, the fundamental problem of the ego.
Okay, but how does this whole thing go global? I mean, an ego-driven state doesn't just exist in a bubble, right? No, it plugs right into a global economic system. A system that has, unfortunately, figured out how to make conflict incredibly profitable. And believe it or not, this isn't some radical new idea. We're talking more than 60 years ago. A U.S. president and a five-star general, no less, Dwight D. Eisenhower, gave this incredibly stark warning that war was on its way to becoming a permanent, self-fueling, and very profitable industry. And that's really the crux of it, isn't it? On the surface, what we hear is all about missions for peace, protecting our national interest. But underneath, there's often this powerful economic engine that actually needs conflict and instability to keep its own cycle of profit going. But, a machine like this can't run on its own. It needs fuel. And that fuel? It's public support. So, how do you get that? Especially when the human cost of war is so incredibly high. Well, it's done through a process that some thinkers have called manufacturing consent. The basic idea is that the public's approval for something like a war has to be built, it has to be constructed, often using mass media and propaganda way before the first shot is ever fired.
And there's often a sort of playbook for this, a blueprint. You create an enemy, you dehumanize them to make them a justifiable target, and then you control the narrative to frame war not as a terrible last resort, but as the only possible solution.
Okay, so if the problem is this massive, self-feeding system built on ego and profit, is that it? Are we just stuck? Or do our sources offer another way forward? A different way to even think about what power is?
They absolutely do. And it's all about a pretty radical shift in how we see power itself. Instead of seeing power as something you own, something you use to dominate, you see it as an amana, a sacred trust. It's not yours to keep, it's yours to be responsible for.
And I want to be clear. This isn't some passive, sit back and hope for the best idea. No, this is about actively re-engineering our systems, building them on stewardship instead of ownership, on justice as the #1 rule, and on a deep, fundamental commitment to peace over aggression. So that leaves us with this final, really powerful question to think about. If we can actually understand the blueprint of the war machine, from that tiny spark of a human ego all the way to the global system, does that mean we now have the tools we need to start imagining and maybe even building something much, much better?